Good morning. Our scripture today is taken from Matthew chapter 4, verses 1 to 11. Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. And after fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. And the tempter came and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread." But he answered, "It is written, 'Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God.'" Then the devil took him to the holy city and set him on the pinnacle of the temple and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, 'He will command his angels concerning you, and on their hands they will bear you up, lest you strike your foot against a stone.'" Jesus said to him, "Again, it is written, 'You shall not put the Lord your God to the test.'" Again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. And he said to him, "All these I will give you if you will fall down and worship me." Then Jesus said to him, "Begone, Satan, for it is written, 'You shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve.'" Then the devil left him, and behold, angels came and were ministering to him. Please be seated.
All right, good morning. Yeah, great to be with you guys. Good to see you all. Hope you're doing well. Feel in many ways like, whether through the songs that we've been proclaiming and declaring, or our prayers together. Whatever I'm going to say here is probably going to feel a little redundant, but that's always nice. I enjoy that when the service itself conveys whatever I'm going to try to convey here as well too. And really what I'm doing is we're just kind of like, I don't know, setting the scene just a little bit as we head into the Lenten season, 40 days plus Sundays between here and Easter, a great celebration of Easter. And if you're in a church that observes the season of Lent and marks the season by following the lectionary, as we were doing like through the season of Epiphany there and the readings that have been laid out for generations and hundreds and thousands of years, every church, every year, you'll start with this passage of Jesus spending time in the wilderness, being tested, tempted, tried. You know, and maybe just this morning, like the way I'm going at it is like, or probably the reason why we always start here is because that's just a very helpful way to understand like what the season of Lent aims to do. Like on the biggest level, it is a participation with Jesus, or like following him, like going back and remembering how Jesus himself like walked that wilderness road and why it was good for him to do that, right? Remember, like, Jesus is being led out here by the Spirit, right? We've just come off of the baptism scene, which started our season of Epiphany, where, you know, as he's coming up out of the water, the dove is descending, and this great voice from heaven declares, okay, this right here, this is my son, right? It's the grand revealing of his glory. This is my son, my beloved son, in whom I'm well pleased. You got to follow this guy. Or how we talked about how, that sonship language, like that's identifying him as the long-awaited king who is here to go to war with the rival kingdoms and reclaim and restore God's creation and the life that he always intended for his people to enjoy. Okay, but between that revealing of his glory, he doesn't just automatically go and start preaching and teaching and doing the works of the kingdom that's coming. But first, it's like the Spirit says, no, come on, we're going into the wilderness. And you're going to be reminded or learn fundamental things that need to be in place if you're going to go at your vocation, your calling as the king effectively, right? And so if it was good for Jesus in that sense, right, it is good for anybody who would dare to follow that king, especially like after what we talked about last week, that this is going to be a suffering king who's going to advance his kingdom through sacrificial love, mercy, suffering, right? So if it's your desire to follow that king, it is good to regularly take a season to remember and to relearn, to re-prepare around those fundamental things that we need to know. Or the other way that I often talk about Lent, it's kind of coincidental that first Sunday of Lent falls after the first spring training game of the year yesterday. I didn't even see. Where's Ray? Did they win? No. Okay, well, there you go. Right on cue. Right. So it's that time of year where, before the season starts, all the Phillies, they got to go down to the wilderness of Clearwater, Florida, and knock the rust off, get back in shape a little bit, work on their mechanics, all necessary things if they hope in the months to come to take down the evil empires of New York and Los Angeles, right? And you could say, whoa, good gracious, these are professional athletes. They've been swinging bats probably since before they could walk. They get paid millions upon millions of dollars and have every resource available to them to help them stay into shape. And, why do they need to go back and take a month and work on the mechanics, go over the fundamentals, start running back and forth across the field? Right? And maybe you could think the same thing, or we're tempted to think the same thing. I've been a Christian all my life. I've known Jesus as long as I've known anything, maybe, or I have read cover to book cover my Bible. I don't know how many times. I know how to pray. I've done this. I got this. Why do I need to take a season every year and just remember and rethink about some fundamental things? Right? But again, that's the aim of the season. If you're going to follow this king, and not just avoid a life of sin, but actually be a proactive life of a kingdom servant and participate with him in the mission that he is undertaking in his creation and join him in that. It's good. Yeah. To go back, get back in shape, work on your mechanics. And maybe the other way that we're going to talk about this, because this is also what Lent aims at. You think about if we play that analogy out a little bit further, right? So the Phillies, as they're down there in spring training, they're getting back in shape. They're stretching maybe muscles that are a little tight from, just being devoted to other things in the off season. And it's a time where they're going to get to work on those mechanics, right? Because maybe as they've been, hanging out with the family a little bit more, taking a little bit more time of rest or traveling or whatever they're doing, maybe their mechanics have just got off just a little bit. Like those pitchers, maybe their release point is a little too high or a little far out to the side. Or maybe, as their core strength hasn't been, kept up. Maybe now they're opening up a little bit too late, and so the power is coming more from their arms than it is the twist of the torso. Please, if you're playing baseball, don't act like I know anything of what I'm saying. But they're gonna go to work on those mechanics so that come April 1st, when it's time to start that, that maybe they've got that, better underway. Right? In a sense, that's what Lent sort of does. We often think of Lent as this penitential time where we are maybe a little bit more mindful of our weakness, of the sins that drove Jesus to the cross, 40-some days later. Another way to put that is it's a season where we allow the Spirit to bring those things to the surface so that we can go to work on them. Or we allow the Spirit to bring to the surface little weak spots in our mechanics of faithful service and faithful mission, faithful testifying to the King. All these things. If you know me here, I'm every bit as much as talking about just the problems of sinfulness as I am also talking about the problems of our mechanics being off in the way that we try to go at the mission of the King. I think that's a struggle in the church, in the modern church, right? So you think of Lent as bringing these things to the surface so that we can go to work on that. I think which is another, this is what the wilderness does. If you think of the wilderness, if you go out into the wilderness and you experience a lack of something, what happens in that moment? If you're hiking through the wilderness, you feel a lack, you feel maybe a little pangs of pain or whatever, desire comes to the surface. You start to desire those things that you don't have in that moment. And desire quickly becomes, a craving the longer it goes, and then craving can kind of become the very like fuzzy line between craving and like this fundamental need that I feel like I need to have, and if I don't have it, my very life is just going to fall apart. Maybe to give not a dumb example, but just like a small example, like some of you I know who are fasting, and some of you I know who are fasting, and in that time of fasting, like you're only drinking water. And so maybe you've chosen to let go of, like coffee or something like that. And so, come 9 o'clock in the morning, or maybe 8 o'clock when you wake up, there's this little desire for coffee. And then all of a sudden, as the day is moving on, like there's this craving for it. And now you're starting to start to feel this nagging pain in the head right here. And now you're starting to feel like, well, now this is a fundamental need that if I don't get this thing, I don't know what. So what's happening? Somebody's coming to the surface. I feel that desire. I feel that craving. I feel like maybe, when we think about that, like, okay, where did this come from? Like, how did this even happen? Okay, I had this desire, for coffee, but okay, apparently somewhere along the way, I don't know if it's the case that my body was just innately built to like fundamentally need these hits of caffeine or else I fall apart. Probably something happened is that I wasn't careful in how I indulged desire along the way, and I actually got my body dependent upon this chemical substance, right? Okay, so I think about that, or maybe even I think, where did I even get this desire for coffee? I can remember a day when, the taste of coffee was utterly repulsive to me. Like, we can all remember that, like, taste like I'm literally drinking dirt. For me, I had a long time. It wasn't until college that I got interested in coffee. I never liked the taste of coffee. I never liked hot drinks, period. But I did kind of like this girl named Amy. And her idea of a romantic evening or romantic, morning was going out and sipping coffee together or sitting around, around a fire in the evening and drinking hot drinks. And because, I had an interest in this girl, all right, I'm going to learn to drink hot drinks and I'm going to learn to drink coffee. And so I, start dealing with this. And of course, as I'm doing it, I'm like, well, if I'm going to learn to drink coffee, I'm not putting all that other junk and floofy stuff in there. I'm just going to learn to drink it black. So it was a period of suffering but repeated exposure and constant, you soften and you get it in and or I don't know, I start to learn a little bit about the fine art or the craft of how you roast coffee beans and how you can prepare an even better cup. And I'm seeing, and so just over time, what's happening? I'm retraining desire. What am I saying other than, so as desire and craving and things come to the surface, as the wilderness brings this out, or as fasting brings these things out, right? We have this opportunity to go to work on those things, to think about them. Where did this come from? Why am I so drawn to this? Why does this have such a grip on my life? Whether it's caffeine or whether it's pride, whether it is, this lust for comfort, success, affirmation, security, long-term, whatever it is, okay, what is this desire? Where did I learn this? How did I become so enamored with it? But then the even greater question, what are you going to do with it? Do you ever think about, does it ever strike you odd that God, you go back into the Old Testament, when God comes to the aid of his people, and he delivers them out of Egypt, en route to a promised land, he's going to take them through a wilderness. Does it ever strike you odd that, geez, man, these people, they were slaves. These are people who've been racked for years and generations, over oppression and injustice, and are suffering the effects of traumatic effects of not having a life of their own and not having anything. Man, God, a little rough that you're going to take them from that, deliver them, and then immediately take them into a wilderness. Okay, but we don't get necessarily, we get hints at sort of the reasoning for that. But I think, but a real part of it is, okay, so yeah, but even in suffering, maybe even all the more in times of trial and justice, oppression and suffering, man, desire and longing for good things, right things are brought to the surface. And you crave those things. And probably those Israelites, they could see all around them the way, the empire, where Egypt went after those things and the gods that they looked to provide those things and to give them, to gratify, to satisfy those longings and those desires. So it's almost like God is saying, okay, yes, I am taking you to a good land that is going to be full of rich blessing and deeply satisfying, deeply gratifying to you. I'm not just delivering you, I'm taking you to it's a wonderful place. But hold on a second. We've got a massive problem here because, you have a whole lot of just and good and right desires, but we got to figure out what to do with those. And maybe what you learned on how you do that in the past, that's not going to work when you get into my land of promise, especially if you're going to be my royal priesthood, my holy kingdom that shines my light to the surrounding nations. So come with me in the wilderness. Let's keep it all stripped away for a little bit so we can walk through. What do I do with those things, right? So anyway, you're getting some high-level, big picture, what the season of Lent is about, sort of why anybody would choose to fast and to let go of something, right? So the desires can come to the surface, so we can go to work on that, we can figure what to do with that, and so that all the more, yes, again, like spring training, my mechanics can be refined and re-honed so that I can be all the more a faithful servant and participant with the King in the mission that he invites me to be a part of. There's big picture of what we're doing as we head into the wilderness with Jesus. Now let's just talk about some of these specifics. And we could preach sermons on each one of them. I'll just highlight a couple things just to get you reflect on them, either here or when you go home. So he's in the wilderness. And he's engaged with the enemy, right? And don't miss that. It's the enemy who has his own kingdom and who is, right, literally hell-bent on making sure that this other kingdom doesn't get a foothold, and however he can knock the king off track. So, Son of Man, you say, you haven't eaten anything. You're hungry. You're weak. You're famished. You're the Son of God. Take the rock, turn it into bread. Get some strength, get some nourishment, whatever it is. What are you doing to yourself here, Jesus? Okay, and what I want to push for, the text gives us no indication that it would have been sinful. And I want to really hone in on this point. The text gives us no indication that it would have been sinful for Jesus to turn that rock into bread and have a piece of bread after not eating anything for 40 days. For instance, the text doesn't tell us that the Spirit told Jesus, go into the wilderness and don't eat. I don't want to press that point further than we need to, but there's almost this sense, that, Jesus understands, this is a season of preparation for me, where I'm going to learn fundamental things or be reminded of fundamental things about who my Heavenly Father is and what He provides for me as I go in mission. And so I'm not going to eat. I'm going to fast. I'm going to feel that want, that lack. And I say that to say that, again, I don't know if the temptation here is to sin. The temptation here, can you see it? It's to knock Jesus off track, right? It's to knock Jesus off that track of learning what he needs to learn from the Father so that he would be armed with that as he starts his public ministry and as he goes on kingdom ministry. Right? And that's just such a subtle and nuanced, and yet that's what the enemy is all about. The enemy, C.S. Lewis brings this out masterfully in his book, The Screwtape Letters. He will often say there, hey, the road to hell is not along these big, flamboyant sins, right? And he's often, the main master devil tempter is telling his apprentice tempter, actually, you want to avoid that because when you do the grand master sins, well, then they know that and they feel that and they feel like, well, I got to do something about this. No, the road to hell is soft underfoot. It's not big turns and curves. You're just gently, slowly inching the person out into the nothing, away from his life giver, away from his sustainer, away from his provider. I think that's the intent here. Hey, Jesus, you're hungry. Satisfy your hunger. You have the power to do it. You have the means to do it. Why are you waiting on the Lord to provide? And the moment Jesus does that, right, this whole journey that he's on, maybe not the whole thing because he's already been at it for 40 days, but at least it ends there because he's taken it into his own hands. And I wonder, can you feel that temptation? Right? This temptation that would meet you at a point of having to wait on God to provide and to sustain and to give strength and to give nourishment when you feel weak. Can you identify with that? Like, we all should be able to identify in some way, even just to mention, that word waiting, right? I was talking with some folks just before the service started who are waiting on medical diagnoses because of an uncertain pathway and uncertain, stuff that they're going to have to deal with. And man, just that thought of having to wait in uncertainty, it just makes me twitch because we've talked about this over and over. Jesus, that whole modern life, strips us of ever having to wait and ever having any endurance to have to wait patiently. Heaven forbid we have to wait, like I used to have to in the old days, for a week for my package from REI to show up, let alone 2 days for thanks to Amazon Prime, whatever it is, right? So whether it's waiting in general, or whether it's just this robust sense of self-sufficiency that our culture breeds into us, that if there's a problem, if there's a lack, if something that we want, we can fend for ourselves, we can care for ourselves, let me just go get it, let me take care of this. Do you ever experience this when, a moment of tension or strife enters into your marriage or to some other relationship? And you know that in that moment, right, God is asking of you to be a participant in his kingdom mission of peace, holy peace and reconciliation and restoration. He's calling you to that in that moment of strife and tension. And you probably know, too, what you need to do to be an active player in that. Yes, I need to, in that moment, somehow in my mind, I need to remember the one who can give me strength. And I need to remember the one who himself, suffered strife, who maybe suffered unjust accusation, or things came at him that he didn't deserve, and it wasn't right for him to have to suffer. And yet he did in love for my sake. And so I have to remember, I've been given so much by this king that I didn't rightly deserve, and he has the strength to provide it for him. And so I need to latch onto him and then move into that strife with sacrificial love. But wouldn't it be so much easier to respond in kind and to launch back some of the wounds that come my way because I'll find some gratification in that? Or wouldn't it be just so much easier to withdraw and isolate and go sit on the couch and put the Phillies game on, which may or may not put me in a better mood by the end of it? Wouldn't it be so much easier to say, I did all that hard work last time. It's the other person's turn to put the work in. Or man, do you ever feel it? How many times have I had to confess, that, when with our children, and man, when my kids have this masterful way of robbing me of my peace because they're going crazy and they're going at one another. Right? I know, in a sense, what my calling is in that moment, right? It's to be a father. It's to bring a certain order and peace, but there's a way to do it that is discipling and nurturing and caring for my children, right? That requires a little bit more work and more self-restraint, or makes stuff that I have to work on in my own heart. It's so much easier. I have the power within me to get control, to get what I'm craving in this moment, to get peace and security, to get it back. And so it's just so much easier if I just move in with a sharp word or whatever, and I get it. Right? Could spend all day talking about that, my own struggles with that or your own struggles. Just want to put that out there. Reflect on it. Think about it. Where is the temptation? And how does Jesus respond? He says, it is written, man doesn't live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord, which is coming right out of the book of Deuteronomy. When the Israelites are in that wilderness period and they feel the hunger, actually, no, it's coming out of Deuteronomy when Moses is reminding them, hey, you're about to go into the land of promise, and don't forget what you learned in the wilderness. That when times of lack come and you feel desire, you feel hunger, remember what you learned. That your life ultimately comes as a result of your obedience to the word of instruction that has been given to you and to your ultimate reliance on the divine word that calls forth your nourishment, your strength, and your sustenance. Let's keep going. Okay, so then he says, all right, well, come with me. Let's go to the holy city. And let's get up to the pinnacle of the temple. How about you throw yourself down and watch some angels come and pick you back up and put it right? Interesting temptation here. You could debate and discuss what his whole strategy here. For the sake of time, I'll just get to, how it comes across to me. Like, it seems to me that, Satan is taking him to this holy place, the city that literally is marked with the presence of God, the faithfulness of God. He's taking him to the temple, like which all of Israel would always look to as the mark that God is with us and he's going to care for us. He says, all right, let's get to the top. And Jesus, look, okay, you're the Son of God. You're waiting on the Lord to provide, to care for you. Okay, great. But look, it's almost like I almost feel like the enemy is coming along as like a mischievous friend and saying, listen, you've got a hard road in front of you. Let me show you something that would be great as you walk that journey. Throw yourself down. Watch. The angels will come and pick you up. And won't it be so great to go at your road, whatever lies before you, with this powerful sign? Oh, yeah, God was there for me, and he's always going to pick me up. Like he literally quotes for him. He says, like it's written in Psalm 91. We know he's going to do this, right? Because you have made the living God your refuge and have entrusted to him, he will spare you from that affliction, and he will send his angels to pick you up lest you fall. Whole lot of irony in that right there, because the text literally goes on to say, and you will... it literally goes on to say, and he will lift you up, and you will be able to trample underfoot the lion and the serpent. Right? Quite literally a hearkening back to Genesis 3 when the promise was made that the offspring of the woman will crush the head of the serpent. Like he's quoting that very passage and saying, Jesus, just throw yourself down, and as the word has promised, it'll pick you up. And so there in that moment, look what's just happened. You don't have to go on your journey just with Psalm 91 in your head. You have a very tangible experience of it. I was riding with Carl. Was it Thursday? We were going up to Jefferson to visit his son, Carl, who we've been praying for. It's just been having a rough go of things. As we're driving in the car, we're talking, and there's been times in the past couple of weeks where Carl is literally coding, there in the hospital bed as they move him or something happens, the hearts stop and they're coming in and they're doing CPR. And so Carl is saying how, him and Lynn, they're having to quite literally at least think about the possibility of the worst case scenario happening, right? And he's saying there as we're talking about, man, what that's like and how you even go there. And he's saying, yeah, and we just have to come to this place of claiming that God will get us through. And, as we're talking about, I find myself just saying, that is, from beginning to end, that is just a statement of pure faith. Because, as a father, as I put myself in that position and I face, just even mentally, the possibility of the worst case scenario, there is literally no human, worldly pathway that I could possibly even imagine that wherein I would make it. I literally am quite certain that I would not make it unless God does it. And he will get us, and he will get us through. Okay, so there's that. That's a statement of faith, and it's a statement of faith for Carl and Lynn that is rooted in the word of promise. God wasn't, his spirit was present with us, but he wasn't audibly in that moment showing up and saying, hey, don't worry, I'm going to be there, I'm going to, carry you through it and, whatever, and look, and let me, I'll do this little miracle for you right here so that you can see very visibly and you can carry that with you into the hospital room. No, it was having to claim that word in faith. And man, if you're going to follow the King on mission in a world that is run amok with rulers and powers and principalities that are hell-bent on making sure that the true kingdom of light gains no ground and is going to push back to the very end, you can rest assured that you're going to face trying times, wearying times, uncertain times, fearful times. And they may be times where God doesn't rend the heavens and show up right there next to you with this powerful sign that he is going to do what he's going to do. And maybe all you have in that moment is Psalm 91. He will be there, he will be good, he will do what is right, and he will carry you in this life or the next to all the good things that he has for you. And can you see the temptation that if he can knock Jesus off of that confidence, throw him down and get that sign, he's all the weaker, just a little bit, the next time trial is facing on the horizon. Again, we could talk all day about all those things. Last one, kingdom. He takes them up onto the high mountain, shows them all the kings of the world. And, oh, man, how many times you want to circle back to this because you don't want to miss the poignancy of what he's saying. All this has been given to me. I'll give it to you. Everything that you're wanting, everything that you're longing for, just bow the knee, and it's all yours. And here's the one that, comes right up to just flat-out brute sin. Bow down and worship the very enemy of your Father, whose whole intent is to resist his kingdom. Bow down, fear me, worship me, and it's all yours. All right, and we talked about last week that I think there's nuance even in this trial, temptation. I don't think it's necessarily him throwing worldly power. Right? Jesus had it all. He left the glories of heaven to come for this very reason. I don't think he's just throwing it. It's that he's throwing it at Jesus and he's offering it to him without the way of the cross, without the scorn, without the shame, without the pain, without the cup of suffering. And so, if the writer of Hebrews is true, that this Jesus was tried and tempted in every way just like us, you have to think that in that moment, you just wonder if in that moment, does he taste just a little bit of fear? As he thinks about the road ahead and what's really being offered, the kingdom without the cross, without the trial, without the suffering servant of Isaiah 53 and all that's described there, does he feel just a little bit of fear? Right? Does he fear, I don't know, can you catch a vision of, the nails coming in or what suffocation is going to be like where you literally cannot draw air into your breath? And you're bleeding out from the head, from the crown of thorns and the whips in your back, whatever it is. Does he have a brief taste of the fear that's going to drop him to his knees in the Garden of Gethsemane and cause him to sweat plop drops of blood as he's asking the Father to take the cup away from him? Does he feel that in that moment? Does he feel a small bit of the shame? Man, that was what Roman crucifixion was all about. We're going to make an example of these criminals, and we're going to put them to as much open shame as we possibly can. We're going to strip them down, and they're going to die the most humiliating death they possibly could. Can Jesus, does he see that as he's, potentially strung up on a hill outside of town in between two criminals and is all in the sight of everyone coming and mocking him and spitting on him? Does he feel some of that shame? I wonder if he feels a little bit of pride, or what might, be the equivalent of divine pride where, as he's thinking about possibly the road before him, and then he remembers, rightly remembers, I didn't do anything to deserve this. I should not be walking this road. And if he just has a glimpse of, and I'm coming to endure all of this for, yes, beloved, but darn it, miserable sinners. Man, I've left the glories of heaven to come down and literally be the bread of life to them that I was craving in the wilderness, to be the manna, the better manna sent from heaven. And all they've done is turn and reject and harden their hearts and close their ears. And I don't deserve what I'm going to endure on their behalf. Be gone, Satan, he says. For it is written, you shall worship the Lord your God and serve him alone. But again, I'm just going to come back to the point. Part of the point here is that if your intention is not just to live a life of, that avoids sin, but it's even more than that, to live a life that is proactively following the King into dark and ruined places, come what may, and to join him in advancing his kingdom through sacrificial love, suffering, uncertainty, you can rest assured that you are going to face situations that stoke fear, shame, pride. Again, bring these things to the surface and bring those desires and those felt needs and all of that and beg the question, what are you going to do with it? As I'm sitting and pondering this text throughout the week, I don't know if fear, pride, I'm sure that, it's always there, but I don't know if those are the big things. But doggone it, I'm in a season where, shame and guilt is lurking right outside the door. Not shame and guilt with my Heavenly Father or doubting his forgiveness and salvation, but shame and guilt in light of my own weaknesses or failures in relationships or responsibilities. And doggone it, if that isn't right there and doesn't Satan know it and can craftily use those things, and doesn't it have I noticed too, it has an unholy power to suck the life out of me, to lay me flat, to sit my butt on the sidelines, on the bench, so that whatever desire or energy to get in the game and to follow the King is weakened. If I'm fully honest, I went to bed last night, woke up this morning with less than average enthusiasm to come and do this morning, right? And I can feel the Spirit saying, yeah, and what are you going to do about that? Okay, here it is. We're bringing it out, like in good Lenten fashion. Here comes all these things that rage against you and that Satan would love to use to knock you off course. And what are you going to do about it? And so maybe that's the last point that I'm preaching to myself as much as I am to anyone. So I'm preaching myself here when I say, and to you, if you come away from this thinking, well, okay, Jesus went in the wilderness. He did it. So I got to follow him. And doggone it, I can do it. If that's the takeaway, not only is that silly, but you've kind of missed the point. The whole point, at least in the book of Matthew, of this wilderness episode in Jesus' life is to show where Jesus is victorious precisely where you can't be. Or it's to show more specifically where Jesus is victorious, where generations of his people prior have failed all along the way, right? That's the whole... He's not doing anything here that the Israelites didn't experience in their own wilderness journey. And they failed. They put God to the test. And they grumbled and they complained and they doubted that he was going to be there to provide, even after he had just utterly humiliated the Egyptian army and opened the Red Sea and walked them through. Yet in moments of trial, they doubted and they wavered and they made idols and they bowed down and worshiped false things. So what does Lent do? It brings it to the surface, and it says, ask that question, what do you do in that moment? And you can make two mistakes. Or like when you think about fasting, for those of you who are fasting, and when the hunger pains come and you feel weak, right, you can make two mistakes. You could make the mistake of just say, all right, I'm out, I tap out, and I go and I satisfy that felt need right there in that moment. Not that that's necessarily sinful, again, mind you, but it will keep you from what could be gained in that moment. The other mistake is that you can say, okay, I feel my weakness, I feel the hunger, and I'm gonna get it, and I'm gonna move through, and I'll see you at dinner time, or whatever it is, Satan, and in that, you miss what could be gained. Because what could be gained in that moment of weakness, and in that moment where Satan is throwing whatever at you, and you feel it, there can be the opportunity to pray, and to draw near to the King who has conquered. Right? To draw near to the one, and this is, I think, why Mike read this passage for us as elders on Tuesday night from Hebrews chapter 2, where there's so much description that is poignant about Jesus, this Jesus who is our great high priest, who ever lives to intercede for us at the right hand of the Father. Right? The true Son, the faithful King who has been victorious. The brother, right, who sticks close to you like a good, faithful brother ought to in moments of trial and weakness and temptation. Or the one, again, in chapter 2, who is not only the author, but the sanctifier of your faith, right? So it's in that moment of weakness at precisely the point where, yeah, I very well may fail. But in that moment, there's an opportunity to come to him and to draw life and nourishment and strength and participate not just in the mission, but in the victory of the King. Again, on and on we could go, but the prayer for you as you move into Lent, especially if you are fasting or choosing to square up with some of your weakness, is that you would do it as the writer of Hebrews would encourage you later on. Lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and fix your eyes on Jesus as you run that race before you, the author and the perfecter, the one who alone has to bring to perfection your faith, and who for the joy set before him, right, Joe? You can quote it for me, I know you can. Endured the cross, despising its shame, and now is seated at the right hand of the Father, from whence he dispenses all of that power and all of that grace to sustain. And I'm going to read one more passage actually to close it, because I was reading it before I came up here. Psalm 91, that psalm that the Satan throws at Jesus. Not a very smart tempter, because if Jesus brought this to mind, what grace is there in this? Because he holds fast to me in love, the voice of God, I will deliver him. I will protect him, because he knows my name. And so when he calls me, I will answer him. And when I will be with him in trouble, I will rescue him, and I will honor him. And with long life, I will satisfy him and show to him my salvation. Isn't that what we all want to see? So go at it and go see it in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.